All right, good afternoon, everybody. If I can have your attention, please, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I wanted to welcome everybody today to LA2M, and we're happy you're all here today. We have a great speaker, and it's going to be a great session, and I'm happy to see a pretty full crowd here, so this is great. Before we get started, I just wanted to ask, is there anybody here for their first time today at LA2M? Show of hands. Wonderful. Well, we're happy you're here. We're glad you're here. We hope you come back. You'll see a great presentation today. In a minute, I'll tell you a little bit about the format so you know what to expect. But a little bit about LA2M. Sorry, I need to get my cheat notes here. So, a couple things. Thanks for registering. We have volunteers here that are helping LA2M with greeting and with registering. I know a lot of you, we started a new feature this past month where we're using Eventbrite. And I know a handful of you, probably half of you, checked in with registered with Eventbrite. And hopefully that was a nice, easy way to do it. It's $1.25 extra, so I've asked Ross at the end to slide in like $1.25 more worth of info that you normally wouldn't get. So just to kind of make up for that little extra fee that Eventbrite puts down there. But it does help us. It's a lot easier with the registration. So hopefully if you didn't use it, maybe try it next month. You can always still just pay $5 at the door, and we'll be happy to do it that way. So again, LA2M is a nonprofit organization. We've been doing this for a number of years now. We meet monthly here at Conor O'Neill's, and we have a speaker. So we have a speaker that speaks for about 30 minutes or so, and then we'll have time for a Q&A. And then at the end, which is part of the best part of LA2M, we pass the microphone and give everyone the opportunity to introduce themselves and say who they are, what company they're with, and if they maybe have an ask. We do it quickly, and we get around the room in about 10-15 minutes, and it's a nice opportunity to introduce yourself and to network. You're also welcome to stick around the room afterwards and network. Hopefully, as we pass the microphone, you'll hear somebody from maybe a company that you want to meet. So stick around and make sure you introduce yourself and pass business cards. It's the other reason we're here to network, too. We're very fortunate. We have volunteers. We are live stream videoing. Rayle here provides the stream. So we are live on the web. If you are not able to make it, you can always watch us live. We also archive each of the presentations. So if you see something in today's presentation you like, you can go back and watch it again. You'll see Carter walking around taking photos. So just be aware when you're about to take a bite of food, you'll probably see the camera go up. So, and then these pictures get posted on Facebook in the next couple of weeks. So you'll see Carter flashing pictures throughout the thing. We're very helpful. We're very thankful for the people who helped us register. Jan's going to be blogging here. We use hashtag LA2M if you're tweeting. Feel free to use that. We also are fortunate we have sponsors that help us because we're a nonprofit. The fee that we pay really just covers our costs. And we try to do a little bit more and give back to the community as well. So we have sponsors. Right now we have an annual sponsor, and that's Briarwood Mall. We're very fortunate that they've been our annual sponsor. So if you have any questions, Denise Murray, I have her card in the back if you'd be interested in some information about how you can market you or your company at Briarwood Mall. She'd be happy to talk to you about that. We are also looking for sponsorships. If you or your company would like to sponsor one of our sessions next month, please see me afterwards. I'd be happy to tell you about it. So, a couple other things. If you do have a good time today and you enjoy the presentation, we hope you'll share LA2M. Whether you tweet it or go back to your office or your workplace or your friends, let them know about LA2M. We love to have a full house here and have a problem finding seats. So we also have a brand new website that just launched yesterday. So if you didn't get a chance or didn't hear about that, it went out in the email. Please check out our new website, la2m.org. Ross actually helped put that together and did a great job. So we really appreciate that. All the information for our sessions will be on there as well. So I think that's about all I have for announcements. The format for today, like I said, Ross is going to speak for about 30 minutes or so, and then we'll have a time for Q&A, and then we'll do pass the microphone around. So I wanted to introduce today's speaker, Ross Johnson. He's from 3.7 Design. He's going to be talking today about the great fundamentals of design. So put your hands together and welcome Ross.
It's kind of nice to have a mid-November day where you can walk around without a jacket. Looks like it's about grand. So my name is Ross Johnson. I go by 3-Point Ross. That's not because I'm good at basketball. I assure you I'm not. Because my design agency is 3.7 Designs, and for whatever reason I felt like using that to stick. So if you don't follow me on Twitter, please do so because it makes me feel good about myself. I don't tweet very often, but I like to see really high numbers because it makes me feel important. I'm actually the product of an architect and a social worker. So I ended up as a web designer, I think because my mom was a social worker and my dad was an architect, which meant that I learned two very interesting lessons growing up as a child and throughout one of my younger years, and that was intention and empathy. So my dad, being an architect, was always looking around and seeing how can we make something better? How can we design something so that it worked better, it functioned better? This is more in a physical space, so like, I go out in my garage and, created something to organize the rakes or something really boring like that. But it was interesting at the same time, where my mom, being a social worker, taught me empathy, which I didn't think for a long time had anything to do with design, but if you think about design from the perspective of you're creating something that people are going to use to hopefully solve a problem, there's a lot of empathy involved. It's about kind of putting yourself into the shoes of others and really forgetting and letting go of kind of your own baggage in order to figure out what's the best solution for somebody who's nothing like you. And so ultimately, that's why I think I became a designer and why I'm here today talking to you about design. About 10 years ago, I started a company called 3.7 Designs, which is an agency here in town. We work with clients locally, internationally, and people come to us when they need to make better use of their web presence. So they usually have a website, but they're not getting the results that they want to, and they need some help with that. I also created a project management software called Project Panorama. This is kind of the same thing where I saw a need from our own business as far as communicating with our clients, and we came up with a tool that we now sell to other people to help manage the project management process. I teach at Michigan State University. Any Spartans here? Nobody. Oh. Please don't rush me. I have to move this slide. Usually there's at least one or two, or like Derek is here, and he's a big Spartan fan.
Good game last night.
Yeah. So this talk actually began 10 years ago. I mentioned I started the agency 10 years prior, and I was actually in school at Michigan MSU, Eastern Michigan University. Forgive me, I'm a little cold. And I was doing design work on the side of taking classes and that sort of thing because I needed extra money for books and beer. And at the time, as a fledgling designer, my focus was on making things look good. That's what I thought was important. I had a background in fine arts. All throughout growing up, I did a lot of sketching, charcoal painting, that sort of thing. And when somebody called me in to help them with a business card or a website or a brochure, my first thought was, how do I make this look really good? And so I had a lot of really fun, interesting meetings that went kind of like this. I've got a video to show you. I think.
So what you working on? Okay.
There we go.
Just act it out.
Here we go.
So what you working on? Okay.
Well, it's not really finished yet.
Ooh, I'll say. You gotta take that sign up button and make it like a lot bigger. Maybe move it down like 20 pixels. There's way too much empty space. You gotta fill that up. People hate scrolling.
Ooh, that green's kind of peaky. You know what color I love? Raw umber. You should try that instead.
I don't like it. It should be like Wolverine's website, you know? I have a girlfriend, and I don't think this design would be giving her goosebumps.
I mean, it's not wrong for somebody, you know.
Yeah, so that's how most of my meetings went. And I kept wondering to myself, like, is this really the best way to design? Is this how you get the most out of your efforts and your investment? But I want to do a quick survey. This, I'm assuming, is just going to be about everybody. How many people in here have a website for their business or their organization? Just about everybody. Now, how important is that website to your business or organization? Raise your hand if it's critically important. Significantly important. Mildly important. Not important at all. Okay, just about nobody. So most of the people err on the side of it's critically important or significantly important. And then now think a little bit about how did you actually plan your website? How do you decide what was going to go onto it? What should it look like? Which images should you use? What messages are going to use? When I ask most people about this, they kind of talk about a lot of different things. We had these discussions, and I had this feeling. But there's a lot of things that actually go into a website. There's a lot of decisions that you have to make. You have to think about the tone, what content, what message you're going to have, how you're going to label things, how it's going to be structured, what layout is most important, is this accessible, what functionality do we have, what imagery we're going to use, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And most of the time when I talk to people, their answer essentially is, how did I plan my website? Intuition. Now, I don't want to discount intuition because on some level we all use it, right? Like you have to use intuition. But is that really what leads to the most successful website? Now, I'm talking in the context of websites, but this really is about design in general, whether you're creating a business card or a brochure or a website or PowerPoint. These all apply. We mostly do websites, so it's easiest for me to explain this concept in terms of websites. So I kept asking myself, what makes a successful website? I go to these meetings where, certain clients would be assured that every page needed a banner up at the top. Every page needs a banner, it needs to have a unique image, it needs to be consistent with the message on the page. Then I go to the next client and they would say, I hate it when every site has a banner. And they were convinced that having a banner on every page was a bad idea. So what was the answer? People would basically just guess based on their own preferences about how the website should be created and put together. And oftentimes, like I talked to people A, it would be completely different than what people B thought. And as a designer myself, how can I recommend the best solution if everybody thought the right solution was different? So back in 2010, I was approached about writing a design book. I had written a blog post about psychological principles that you could use in design to try and influence success of the design. And a scouter came across it, thought it was interesting, contacted me and asked me if I wanted to write a book. And I said, sure. And they didn't think that that concept, that blog post that I had put together was the right fit for a book. So I ended up getting on the phone with the publisher, and we were talking through different ideas, how can we turn this into a cohesive idea for a book? And we kept coming back to this idea of, what is quality? You'd ask me, what makes your websites different? I'd say, well, we just look at all the different aspects of design and the important aspects of a website, and we do them all really well. We create just really quality websites. We kept coming back to this idea of doing lots of little things really well. And this was ultimately the inspiration for the book. He said, well, what about you writing something about what are all those elements you should think about when you're trying to create a successful design? And I come across in previous research and reading through books this idea of a design hierarchy of needs, which was based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm sure we've all seen this. It's kind of what is the different structures of things in one's life that they have to get in order to be the most successful and really reach kind of the highest level of potential. If you look at the highest performing people in the world, like Einstein and presidents and that sort of thing, what do they have in their lives that allows them to reach the top? And somebody kind of mapped this idea to design. What elements does design need in order to reach its full potential? And I thought this was an interesting idea. But I didn't think it was perfect. So the original concept, they said that on the base level, you've got functionality, what is the purpose of the thing that you're creating, whether it's a business card or a website. Then reliability, does it perform reliable? Is it easy to use, does it improve people's lives, and does it communicate what it needs to communicate? And I thought that it was a little pigeonholed into this whole triangle and Maslow's approach. And the more I thought about it, I came across 6 key things that design needed in order to be successful. It needs to be functional, reliable, usable, useful, communicative, and emotional. This ultimately created a framework for effective design. How do you go about something in a consistent way that allows you to produce the most effective outputs? Which means there's no guessing. Because unlike my younger self, who thought differently, design is not artistry. You don't have to be an artist in order to be a designer. In fact, everybody in here designs something on some level. You make intentional decisions about how you want to do things or how you create things in order to produce specific outcomes. And design is also not about being a hipster. Design is about problem solving. So anytime you have a problem and you intentionally do something to try and fix that, you are designing. So the official definition is purpose planning or intention that exists behind an action-backed or material object. And that means you can be a designer. So the next time it comes to producing something by design, instead of asking yourself, do I like this? You can ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish? And if you look at the design layers, it starts at the bottom with the most fundamental, and as you move up, you're really just optimizing the design. So if you don't have the time or the resources really to put as much effort as needed into each individual stage, the best thing to do is put the most resources down towards the bottom and work your way up. And I'll go through each one just so you can get a better idea of what I'm talking about. And it all starts with functionality. Now, in the context of websites, a lot of people think about functionality in terms of what does it do? Like, we're building some custom program that's going to do something. But in the context of design, it's really, what are you trying to accomplish? Have you created something that can fulfill its most basic objectives? So, in the case of a website, this might be, am I generating leads? Am I selling products? That is the function of your site. That's the reason that it exists. And really, this comes down to two different parties, stakeholders and users. So the stakeholders, these are kind of like the suits. These are the business people behind or the organization or business, and they have some specific goals as far as why they're investing the time, the resources, and the money to create whatever it is you're creating. And sometimes this can kind of feel like a balance because, or can feel like some tension because the business people have certain objectives that aren't necessarily nice to the users, the people who are actually coming to your site. So if you focus too much on the users, it might feel a little hippy-dippy, where it's like, everybody should just get free access to content. We don't want to use paywalls. And like advertising, that's annoying, so we're not going to do that, even though there might be some business reasons behind that. So you need to think about, what are the business objectives? What are we trying to accomplish this as an organization or a business? And then what are the users trying to accomplish? Because people are spending their time, their valuable time, coming to your site, and they don't have to. They can go to anybody else's site, or they can just choose not to come to your site at all. If you look at the way that the economy is changing, a lot of the disruptive businesses out there are all focused around saving time. So if you disrespect the user's time, they're not going to stick around. They're not going to read your brochure. They're not going to flip through your PowerPoint. They're not going to visit your website. They're just going to leave. So you need to be aware of what they're trying to accomplish and make that easy. So when you're going through the process, at each stage you should be thinking, instead of do I like this, you think, will this fulfill the objectives we have put in place, that we have defined? Instead of thinking, do I like this, you can think, will this serve the users? Will this help them accomplish their goals and help them achieve what they're looking to achieve? Now, once you get past that, you get into kind of a funny layer of design called reliability. Now, the interesting about reliability is probably like the least sexy part of design. Like, nobody's like designing things and saying like, ooh, this will be super reliable. That's cool. But it's an important factor. So are you creating something that will have a reliable experience from user to user to user? Now, in product or industrial design, this is very obvious. If like 1 out of 5 iPods or iPads doesn't work, that's a huge issue. But on the web, there's a lot of things you need to think about in terms of creating a consistent, reliable experience. I think the most obvious is, how does it perform across multiple different devices? You know, these days you can't just say like, hey, everybody's going to be on a 15-inch monitor running 1024 by 768 and create like a one-size-fits-all website. It just doesn't work because everybody's using multiple different devices with different sizes. And so you really need to think about, how does it perform across all those devices? And the easiest and best approach, at least as of today, is responsive design, which is a technique where you design one site that will expand and contract and collapse based on the viewport or the screen size. But beyond that, you need to think about performance. What happens when a lot of people are hitting your site and you've got a video that plays automatically on the homepage, and all of a sudden the server starts to slow down, and half the people can't access the site, or it takes longer than 3 seconds, which is usually the cutoff point where everybody starts to leave. So as you're going through the different stages of design, you need to think, instead of, do I like this, you think, would this perform reliably? Now, once you've gotten past reliability, you can start thinking about usability. Now, the funny thing about usability is, like, most of the time when I talk to people about usability, everybody agrees it's important. But how many people, like today, how many people today have had a frustrating experience online because something isn't usable? Okay, at least a handful of people. And that's that you can remember. So if everybody values usability, why are so many sites still unusable? Why are they still difficult to use? It's because usually people just disrespect usability. They say, oh yeah, it's important. We want things to be usable. They don't actually invest in it, or they make usability sacrifices over trying to make something look cool or exciting. So you need to think about, have you created something that users understand intuitively, or do they have to think to use it? Because thinking, that's the problem. If somebody has to stop and think, what do I do? What do I click on? Then you've already lost. It needs to be so intuitive that people don't have to think. I think the most common example of this that I see everywhere that's really frustrating is this little guy up here. Does anybody know what this is? Hamburger. The hamburger menu, right? So someplace, somewhere decided that 3 little lines means menu. And like it's getting to a point where people starting to figure it out, but a lot of people have no idea what this is. Instead of having the menu apparent at all times, they just have this little 3-line sort of icon. They say, oh, well, people click on that and the menu will come out. Essentially what they're doing is they're sacrificing usability for aesthetic appeal. Because sure, things that look cleaner, look nicer, but people can't find out how to get to your content, then how successful is your website going to be? Now, I'm a stickler for navigation because I feel like so many people make problems here, or like create issues here. Another one is just kind of vague labeling, like what is resources? Like on so many websites, I see resources, and it's like never clear, like what goes in resources? It's just too generic. And if you don't know what's going to be on the other side of that link, chances are you're not going to click on it. So your labeling needs to be very specific. I also see people trying to get a little too cute with their navigation. They think they're going to be different. Instead of saying like about us, they'll say our story. And if somebody comes to your site thinking about, I need to find the about section, they might completely miss our story because they're in a hurry. They've got 5 to 10 seconds to try and click on and find whatever they're looking for. And if it's too frustrating, they'll leave. And so trying to get cute with your navigation typically just means it's going to be less effective. Or you see people doing like these massive mega menus where there's like 50 different things to choose from. It's painfully difficult to do. There's actually psychological studies that show the more options you have, the harder it is to make a decision. So if you have 20 or so things to click on, you have to go and evaluate and try and decide which one is best for me. And especially if 2 becomes very similar, it becomes even more difficult. Yes?
I understand what you're saying about the cluttered menu, but when you have a particular audience and you're trying to reduce the number of clicks to get to the specific information, then what we've tried to do is make each link be something really specific because we know what people are normally going to go to and we don't want them to have to drill down to get to it.
Yeah, so that's something that I see people talk about quite often, this idea of trying to reduce the number of clicks. And what that was like really popular, this 3-click rule, like you should be able to find any content you want within 3 clicks in the early 2000s. But what a lot of the usability studies show that there isn't actually a drop-off after a certain number of clicks, provided the information set is strong enough with each click. So it's this idea of progressive disclosure. It's okay for somebody to have to click 5 times to find what they're looking for, as long as after each click, it's clear what the next action is. And that tends to be more effective than having 20 very specific items, having 5, more general that drill down. So again, as you're going through the process, again, instead of asking, do I like this, you think, will users intuitively understand this? Will somebody see this who has no idea what my product or service is about, has no background, know what they should do? And then you can move into proficiency. This is really where you're trying to optimize the process of your design. You're really trying to optimize the experience and get the most out of your website. If you've gotten those first 3 down really well, chances are you're going to have a successful website. And then you can move into proficiency, communication, and emotion. Now, proficiency is all about creating something that actually makes users' life easier. This is what improves people's lives. This is really the powerful aspect of design. You can create something that makes somebody's daily life easier. And as a result, they're going to remember and come back to you much more often. I think in a physical space, in the physical world, there's a lot more obvious. If you need someplace to sit down, a wooden bench works perfectly well. That's a successful design, right? You don't want to put weight on your feet, so you sit on a bench. Not particularly comfortable. Instead, if you get a Herman Miller chair, well, that's a lot nicer. You can sit for 8 hours and not get uncomfortable. There's another designer that I think had a brilliant example. He was really frustrated with the way that tickets work, airline tickets. I think everybody can agree that the whole airline experience isn't all that great. And he was thinking, he would go travel internationally, and he'd always stick his ticket into his passport, and he'd always have to pull out the ticket and look to see what gate am I, what time is it leaving, et cetera, et cetera. And it was really difficult. And so he thought, well, what if we redesign the ticket? A, we can make sure that the most important information is easier to see by emphasizing it, by making it bigger compared to a normal ticket where everything's the same size. And then what if we just did something small, like putting the flight number in the gate on the top left-hand corner, so when you stick it into your passport, that's the part that's showing. Now all of a sudden, instead of having to walk around pulling the ticket out and saying, okay, what gate am I, it's always visible, which I think is really brilliant design. Now applied to the web, it could be something simple like this we did for a client where a lot of people, they do treatment for lakes and stuff like that. If you live in a neighborhood that has a private lake, you might have some problems with algae and things, growing that you don't want to. And a lot of people would come to their site just really curious, like, what is this stuff growing in our pond? Is this dangerous? Should I be worried about it? Is this, invasive? And so we just created like a very simple identify your aquatic plant tool where people could go through and click on the various different details, and then as a result, it would tell them, here's your problem, here's what you need to do. Now, this page is very, very successful. It gets tons of traffic. And not everybody converts into a customer, but certainly more people do than had we not created something that made people's lives easier. So instead of thinking, do I like this, you can think, does this add value to the user's life? What can you create that makes whatever problem the user has, the reason they're visiting your site, the thing they're trying to accomplish, what can you do to help solve that problem? What can you do to make their life easier? And then you can move on to communication. So visual design, at its most basic level, is a form of communication. Everything that you see, everything that goes and is processed by your brain in a visual way, creates a series of associations that tells you something about what it is that you're consuming. So you go to a website, and before you even realize it, you've developed an impression, a thought, a feeling about whether this website is about a high-end brand or a cheap brand. Is this a big company or a small company? You develop these associations, you develop these assumptions, and that's going to shape the whole experience and shape that person's decision to work with you. And ultimately, design can look good and still be completely wrong. And that's where this comes to. You could have a site that looks like this, which looks very clean, very simple, looks very organic in nature. But if it was for like a cheap, discount clothing company, it would feel off. This wouldn't be successful because people would come to it and they would assume that this is about a completely different type of product. Or you could have a site that looks like this, looks very trendy and fashionable. But if it's about IT solutions, you probably get kind of a weird disconnect and you wouldn't want to work with them because the message is wrong. So ultimately, the imagery that you choose, the colors you choose, the photos you choose, all those tell the user something. And you need to think about what it is that those are communicating. And this is, I think, an area where a lot of people, it's a tough thing to disconnect because you're naturally going to say, like, do I like this? Does this look good to me? But sometimes that doesn't matter. What ultimately matters is, does this look good to your customers or your potential prospects? Some of the most successful websites that we've done, I haven't liked the design. It didn't appeal to me, but it certainly appealed to the people we were trying to communicate with. So think about, do my users like this? Does it say the right things? And then you can move on to the emotional level. So all of our behavior is essentially rooted or initially rooted in emotion. If you think about any major decision you've ever made, even though you've probably thought about logic and you've weighed the different options and you've tried to figure out what logically makes the most sense, what makes your decision, what ultimately leads to that decision is a gut feeling. Does this feel right? Does this feel right or does this feel wrong? And that's ultimately what makes your decision. And this even happens on a small level, on a website, or picking up a brochure, or looking at a business card. There's an emotional feeling you get with this when that interaction happens, and you decide at that point, does this feel right? Is this at least worth pursuing further? So when you're looking at, we'll start with there's 3 different aspects, or 3 different areas of the brain. There's the reptilian complex, and the limbic system, and the neocortex. And the neocortex came last. So as far as we look at the evolution of our brain, the neocortex was the last piece that was actually developed. The reptilian complex, which deals with survival, and the limbic system, which deals with emotion, those are kind of our fight or flight sort of emotional responses. And that's where there's a lot of power when it comes to design. So judgments originate in the reptilian complex, and then are later processed by the limbic system, and then later justified by the neocortex. So there's a lot of studies which show that people's behavior and their justification for their behavior are completely different. So what ends up happening is we make these kind of unknown decisions, or we behave in a certain way, and when asked, why did you do that, we come up with reasons as far as why we actually did it. So there's a lot of power in trying to influence people and create the right emotional response when it comes to our design. I think one of the most relevant examples that we can all relate to is how many people have been driving someplace, they kind of arrive and realize, like, wait, like, I don't remember any of the trip. Did I run through that red light? I hope not. So your brain was able to process some very complicated thing. It's called highway hypnosis. You're able to, participate in traditional driving rules. When you use a turn signal, when you stop, when you go, you're able to control a very complicated system, a car, right? Like, how much pressure do you put on one pedal versus the other? How do you use the steering wheel? How do you shift, potentially, if you've got a manual car? All those things without consciously thinking about it. And that's how powerful your brain is. It can do all of that subconsciously. And it also influences your decisions. So anything that somebody sees or experiences on a website is going to create an emotional reaction, which is going to then influence their higher level thinking. And some examples, if you read 2 words, or 3 words, tomato juice and diarrhea, you probably get a sort of gross physical reaction. It doesn't feel good, right? And that's just reading some words. So you think about the power of just showing somebody something and able to have a physical reaction. There's some colors that supposedly they have measured create a difference in metabolism. So there's certain colors that, when exposed to, can speed up or slow down your metabolism. That's how powerful these visuals are. But a lot of this comes down to, on the most basic level, fight or flight instincts, because your higher level thinking is slow. And that's the problem with it. If you're in a dangerous situation, there's a car coming at you, you don't have time to think, oh no, this is probably bad, I don't want the car to hit me. Should I move left? Should I move right? Should I duck? Because by that point, you're probably going to get hit by the car. So instead, your body automatically reacts. It's constantly assessing, does this feel safe or does this feel dangerous? So being shown pictures of fresh water, for example, feels safe. I mean, is it like random that people love to be by fresh, clean water, or fresh, clean looking water? No, it's tied back to what ultimately would keep our race alive. Or why are so many people afraid of spiders or snakes? Again, this is a common danger signal that is deep-rooted in our nervous system that says this could be a threat. And this also applies to design. So if you see something that's very clean and open and well-organized, it feels safe. Like, you come to the site, and before you can even articulate why does this feel good, if you've already had that reaction that says this feels safe, this feels okay. Now, if you go to a site like this, it feels dangerous. It doesn't feel good. Like, wouldn't you want to put your credit card number in a site like this? Probably not. I wouldn't. Because it's a feeling. It's a gut instinct. It's an emotional reaction. So again, you think about, instead of do I like this, you think, does this elicit the right emotional response? Am I creating the right environment for people to make the decisions that I want them to make? Now, a lot of times, yeah, you do want people to feel safe, but not always. If you're selling security systems, for example, maybe you want people to feel like there's imminent danger, and you have to get your product or your service in order to protect yourself from that. So there's a whole range of emotions that you might want to consider trying to produce the right emotional response from. So, to recap, effective design isn't random. You don't get to it by guessing. You don't get to it just by using intuition. Even as a designer who's been doing this for a long time, 15 years professionally, Like, I never just use my intuition because it can be wrong. You have to use a proven process, and you have to think about what are the different aspects that are going to lead to the most effective design. Every choice needs to be intentional. You need to go through and think about, you know, if we're going to put a header image here, if we're going to put a picture here, if we're going to put messaging here, and these are what the messaging is going to be, you have to think about how is this going to affect the function of the site? Is this going to contribute to what we're trying to accomplish? Is this going to help the users accomplish what they're looking to accomplish? Is there going to be reliability issues? Does this improve usability? Does this help users accomplish what they're going to do? Does this communicate the right things? And how will this affect their emotional response? And based on what everybody's shown of hands, your website's too important just to do this randomly and to leave it to chance. This doesn't always have to happen just right at a redesign either. There's no reason you can't go to your site now and evaluate it and figure out like what things can we do to improve the site and the design on these different levels. Thank you.
We only have one microphone, I know that Ross keep it, but do we have any questions for Ross? Great information, thank you for sharing that. There's got to be some questions. Go ahead, if you just speak loudly, I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. So for like the first few things on your hierarchy, it's like, it looks like that it's probably pretty easy to measure how those are affected by changes you make to your website. When you're talking about like things like emotion and things that are more subjective, you know, like what metrics do you look at when you do A/B testing, or like what feedback systems do you put into place to like measure the effect of changes that you make on your site with regards to those factors?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it can be more qualitative. Like some of the things like communication, are we communicating the right things? You can definitely test with A/B testing, right? Like you switch out one image for another, and if one better aligns with the users, maybe you'll see an increase in conversions. For things like emotion or proficiency, it's more qualitative, where you might actually do like user testing and ask questions like, how did you feel as you're using the site? Or even just kind of record their responses and try and measure some of those things. To your point, it is harder to measure, and so there's kind of a limit as far as like how much you can figure out, but it's kind of traditional field work, qualitative measurement is the approach we usually take. Does that help?
Any other questions? Ross, go ahead, please.
Sorry, when you had the overstock.com slide up and we were talking about all the expansive listings there, you had used a phrase I didn't quite catch about, so obviously I missed that point, but can you kind of recap that, why you want to avoid that? There's a new philosophy out, I believe you said?
Yes. Oh, so there's a psychological principle called Hicks' Law. And it basically says that the more options that somebody has, the harder it is to make a decision. And we tend to think that we want more options, like, Baskin Robbins, give me as many flavors as possible. But with the more options that we're given, the longer it takes to make a decision, and to a certain extent, it'll prevent us from making a decision altogether. So there's this really famous study where they set up a jam display at a high-end grocer, and they had two different situations. One where they just had 2 jams you could sample, and one where you could have 40 jams that you could sample. And what they found is that when you had 2 jams that you could sample, it was like an 80% difference in the amount of people who actually ended up purchasing. So even though more people stopped when there was 40 different jams, it attracted more attention. Fewer people purchased because it was just too difficult to decide, do I want strawberry or do I want cran strawberry? Do you think that was it?
So your solution to it is not just stronger category names or stronger,
Yeah, so,
if you have 100 products you have to sell, I mean, how can you?
right, so in that example, if you had 100 products that you could sell, you could, in theory, have a list of every single product.
Right.
But probably what you do is create categories. Now, if you end up with 50 categories, you could then create parent categories and subcategories. So at some point, you could pare them down to a place where it was easy enough to navigate without having to assess like 100 different links. And that's the concept of progressive disclosure. Right, rather than showing everybody everything at the same time, you show them enough to attract their attention and give them the opportunity to opt into seeing more. This is where you typically see, I mean, most sites use this these days, where you see like a picture, a title, and an excerpt with an option to click more, read more. That's progressive disclosure. You could have the entire article on a news site, for example, but that doesn't make sense because it would be overwhelming.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
So we're redesigning our websites right now, and I'm in the middle of writing content, coding content, and.
Can you speak up
Oh,
so
I'm
everybody
sorry.
can hear?
Okay, we're in the middle of redesigning. We have 6 websites. So right now I'm in the process of writing content and pulling the photos and graphics. And I'm not a designer by trade, I'm a writer, but I do a lot of designing anyway based on what you're saying. So I have people on one side that feel that every single choice should be obvious at all times on every page, like you said. And then I have other people that say, this is way too much, nobody's going to read all this, you need to make everything really, really short. So I'm kind of caught in the middle, trying to give people enough so that they can make a choice about whether to go on, I like the progressive disclosure, but the mindset still for some of the people I work with is, oh my goodness, they can't click 3 times. So maybe you could just talk to what happens when the clients want it one way. I'm going to call the people I work with my clients. But when the clients, you want it one way, but you are trying to design it based on best practices now, and
Yeah, so we run that a lot, even still. So I guess kind of the general question is, like, what do you do when you want to design using best practices, but you're running into friction because people might have different thoughts about what might be a best practice? It's possible. It's really hard to argue with data and research. So there's a lot of people out there, like the Nielsen Norman Group, who publish a lot of information about what works and what doesn't. And it's all based on, very scientific studies. So that's certainly one way. If you have the luxury of doing any usability testing or prototyping, that's another way. So actually getting people to use kind of a rough mock-up of what you're suggesting and seeing how they struggle, that's also really hard to argue against. And then beyond that, just some general education about how your clients aren't the user. I think a lot of times people get stuck in this mindset of like, well, I would want it this way. But the mere fact that you're involved in the project means you know 100 times more than any user actually ever would. You can't just put yourself in their shoes. It just doesn't work that way. So even if you can't do an interactive prototype, maybe getting some potential users in the room and talking to them and hearing their thoughts. There's a project we worked on a couple of years ago where everybody was just so focused on like, we need to have a slider, which is kind of like you go to a website and there's like one banner and it'll switch to another banner, switch to another banner. And we showed them the research that said sliders aren't effective. Nobody looks at any slider beyond the first one. Nobody clicks on any slide but the first one. And they were still really focused on that. And we got a bunch of users in the room and asked them what do they hate, and they all said sliders. And that became a very easy decision to make at that point.
Is that the same? Oh, okay.
Oh, no, you
Is
can
that
follow
the
up.
same as rotating photos? Is that what sliders are? I haven't heard that term before.
I think typically, yeah, it is photos that are rotating on the home page with a message and a button, a carousel slider.
Okay, you know what? We're out.
Oh, sorry.
All right, so we're out of time here, so we got to give enough time for us to do introductions. But I'm sure Ross will stick around, so if you have some more questions, come on up afterwards. So please join me in thanking Ross again for the information that he shared today. Now, this is the part of LA2M that I think is one of the more beneficial things, other than the outstanding information that Ross has just shared with us. But we passed the microphone around. So we're going to go all the way around the room. We're going to start up here in front. Just pass the microphone to the person next to you after you're done. If you could just say your name, your company, if you have a quick ask, and we can get around the room in less than 50 minutes. We'd appreciate it. And can I ask you to start? And stand up, please, if you don't mind, so everyone can see you. Nope, just talk.
Hi, I'm Janet Max. I have my own company, Enhanced Endeavors. I do a lot of writing and editing. I do have a website, enhancedendeavors.com.
Hello, I'm Victor Bantha, Dog and
marketing and advertising photography, websites, brochures, catalogs, you name it, victorbanders.com.
Hello, my name is Sharaji Beasley. I work at Absopure Water Company. I'm a marketing associate. I'm here with my boss.
Hi, my name is Frank Zielinski. I'm the marketing director for Absopure Water.
Well, I'm Andy Ross, and I make websites, and I've been making websites for nearly 20 years.
Good afternoon, I'm Jenna Blackwell, and my husband and I have an e-commerce business where you no longer have to depend on a paycheck, but you can develop assets to create additional income.
I am David French at Arbor Scientific. We're not in the marketing world, but we're looking for a digital marketer. Anybody has any references, seeing words? We've been in the Ann Arbor, Saline area for almost 30 years.
Danny Mayer. Actually, it's intern with Ross. I'm a web designer and developer, and I'm here with my partner Armando. We are launching an e-commerce site to sell disc golf discs.
And I'm Armando Munoz. Like Danny said, we started a disc golf website focusing on promoting Michigan disc golf, HeiserShop.com.
I'm Carrie Schoenig. I'm with a group called Great Lakes Trade Adjustment Assistance Center. We work with manufacturers in Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio who've been hurt by imports as part of the federal program.
Hi, I'm Jen Wilder. I'm a retired development officer at the University of Michigan Law School, and I'm working with my brother on social media marketing for his bookstore in North Dakota.
Hi everyone, I'm Shamir Ozeri. I'm a digital marketing consultant, and I specifically work with young companies who have scalable products on their growth tactics and implementation.
Hi, I'm Sasha Moore with Martopia, and we help companies achieve their growth goals with the right mix of marketing and PR.
Hey everybody, I'm Dave Murray, the big guy at Maniacs Branding, strategic plans for the gutsiest brands, where we give business owners and entrepreneurs a shot at better lives by branding the hell out of their businesses. Kid in the room, my bad. Anyway, so one of the good things, we start off branding. Branding is kind of the first thing you need to know when you're starting your business. So we get things branded for everything, so then the marketers can actually do what the marketers are supposed to do. So we do like to help out that way.
Hi, everybody. I'm Stacy from Dollar Bill, local digital print shop. We love to help nonprofits and all of the businesses get things done fast and cost effective.
I'm Wayne Anker. I'm a web developer, specializing in developing sites and applications on the Google platform.
I am Jeff Vilas, Vice President of a California-based marketing company, opened 7 satellite offices here in Ann Arbor, and we focus on small, medium businesses and helping grow their digital footprint.
Hi, my name is Erin McMahon, and I work at Damien Farrell Design Group. We're an architecture firm. We have a website, dfdgonline.com, but don't look at it because I'm not happy with it. I'm Angela Chessery. I work at Beckett and Rader, which is a landscape architecture, engineering, and planning firm right here in Ann Arbor, and we're working on redoing our website right now.
Hi, I'm Maureen Riley. I'm the executive director of the Ann Arbor Street Art Fair, the original. And we also are in the process of looking at updating our website.
Hi, I'm Alina. I'm a product designer at Duo Security. We are leading a certification security company. And we just opened an office in London, so we are growing like crazy. If anyone ever needs protection and security solutions, definitely look at our website, weareduosecurity.com.
How's it going, guys? My name is Bo. I'm an engineer also at Duo Security. Like Alina said, we do like cloud security for enterprises. We are definitely looking for talented designers and engineers, so if you guys have any interest, definitely come talk to us.
Hello, I'm Sean Whitehouse. I'm the marketing coordinator at the Center for Automotive Research, and I'm just kind of here to get some information because we're looking to do a website redesign in the near future.
I'm Nancy Fairley, and I'm a creative marketing consultant from Jackson, and I've been working with a handful of manufacturers on their marketing and website needs.
I'm Sherry Lee, SL Creations. I'm a glass artist, SL Creations Online.
Hi, I'm Heather Harold. I'm the Vice President of Consumer Marketing at a company called Arbor. We're a sleep technology company based in Bloomfield Hills. We make products to help people sleep better and live better. One of the world's largest manufacturers of adjustable beds and mattresses as well. One of the things we're working on over the next few months is enhancing our storytelling through video. So I'm looking for anyone that may have any experience or references they can give me on good videographers that are good at creating memorable stories through video.
All right.
Yeah, gee, what a coincidence. Is this a setup? I'm Roger Rayle. I'm a venture catalyst, but I do a lot of videoing, and I started this Arbor Video Interest Group almost 3 years ago, right, Carter? So you can come to the A2 Big Meeting in December, second Wednesday, and meet a whole bunch of videographers and choose from the pack. I also do a lot of events and a lot of work with startups and the startup community. So it's nice to see companies like Duo doing so well. Keep that going. I think before I end, we've got to get Lindsay up here to introduce some of Ross's best work. So you start making your way up to the front because you will be able to.
I'm Nancy Henry. I'm an executive and cross-culture coach, and I help people write the best sitting. I'm here because I've been working with a number of contracting agencies, and I'm starting to do things on my own and I need my own website. So I've used to be managing the marketing department and have people do it for me, and I'm at the point where I have to learn to do it for myself, at least think for myself. So I'm trying to learn what being, in fashion is for myself. Hey everybody, I'm Joyce Williams, Public Affairs Manager for Drive LA Annual, your community nonprofit ambulance service.
Hi, I'm Kurt Sherwin, Frostprint Studios. I'm a commercial editorial and portrait photographer and videographer. Covers just about anything except for weddings, studio, location, candidates, business portraits, products from jewelry up to structures. And if you're a runner, you probably know me because you probably see me something like that. I'm Rayle Sports Publications senior photographer.
All right, and Lindsay is not standing up back there, but Ross's best partner is in the back with his best work, as Roger said. So welcome, Lindsay, and Ryan in the back there. So kind of heard him a little bit there. He's our youngest visitor to LA2M today. So we welcome him. My name is Jim Uziel, and in addition to my duties at LA2M, I also work with a company called Mobile Comply, and we do credentialing for connected and autonomous vehicles. So if you work in the connected vehicle landscape, I would love to talk to you about it. So if we could also again thank Ross for his time again here today. We appreciate the information. Two other announcements real quick. Next month we do have a meeting, a session next month, and it is going to be on December 9th. So Wednesday, December 9th, if you mark your calendars, invite your friends and colleagues. It's going to be Dave Lindenberry, who has been here before. He's a veteran of LA2M. He's going to be talking about why isn't my marketing working anymore. So Dave has done many presentations here, is a great speaker, so we look forward to seeing Dave. Also, next month in December, we've had a lot of changes here at LA2M. We usually do a Christmas party. We're not doing a Christmas party this year, so we're just going to do a regular session on December 9th and then pick back up again in the new year. So thank you everyone again for being here today. We appreciate your time here. We hope you have a successful rest of the day and go out and make business. Stick around and network, and Ross will be available if you have additional questions. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you.